Hello, everyone. My name is Liliana Hernandez, a licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor here with Luminarias Institute. This video is in regards to our weekly, monthly log and calendar and how we go about using those. I do, again, suggest you taking notes and making a list of maybe some questions you might have for your supervisor on how to execute some of these forms if it isn't clear. So here we start with a blank weekly and monthly reporting log. This is where your whole caseload will begin to develop. So there are a couple of columns here, and I don't want it to be intimidating whatsoever. The majority of the time, we try to fill out as much information as we can up front, especially when they're being transferred over. So this will sometimes already have incoming information. But as you are getting a new client assigned, your goal is to immediately go to this form and update the form. At minimum with their first and last name, the intake, the date that they were actually assigned to you. So if you got the referral today would be the date of that. And if you actually opened up the referral tomorrow, we prefer that you use the date that it was actually sent over to you. And as you continue to meet with the client, the rest of the time, the dates and the time will be uploaded on here. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like. So why do we request this information? For all, uses and purposes, definitely is for tracking. We want to make sure that things are being documented accordingly. It serves for a couple of different things, as it states here. Definitely information in regards to demographic and to identify who's on your caseload, especially when things happen, such as transferring from one clinician over to another, since you are only here for a short, limited time. We are able to make a notation of what the diagnosis is as well for supervisory documentation and billing purposes, just to make sure that we're always in the same clinical loop, or that we're talking about the same client with the goals and we're making progress towards working with these clients. We have the referral and intake date, and this is really to identify how long it's taken the family to set up the appointment. Sometimes family members, caregivers won't respond to our calls. They will set up an appointment, cancel, set it up again, cancel again, etc. And it just helps us identify if this is actually a caregiver or client that is ready for services at this time. Does it mean that we need to make additional calls from either the school, the referring party, to let them know that this is something they requested and we're reaching out, etc. The CTP, or the client treatment plan, due date is tracked here and updated as needed. We want to make sure that as we're assessing and coming up with a treatment plan, that it is done within the first 30 days of treatment. Obviously, with a little asterisk on that, because sometimes it does take our families a couple of missed sessions that extends the first 30 days. But for the most part, it should be done within the first 30 days. Now, honestly, as we get to practice our assessing skills and coming up with goals, the time frame really seems to shorten. We can actually go ahead and put on our calendar a 2-hour assessment and not prolong it over a couple of different weeks, etc. So that can definitely change, but if it's going over the 30-day mark, please make sure that you're keeping your supervisor informed as to why that has been extended. We also track here the school and the site that's referring over the client, because we do provide feedback to the schools simply in reference to the referrals that they've made, if we've actually connected them to a clinician, and again, if we are having a little difficulty in getting the caregiver to bring in the client, or of possible information that we've received during an intake, as they no longer want the services, they're not going to move forward with the services. We do want to make sure that the schools know that information as well, in case they have some feedback for that. And Ben will share a little bit more information of this on his video as well. Or maybe you received it already if you've already watched that video. So here is a weekly, monthly report with all the information. I've split it up in a couple of different pages so that we can really see the information. So we have the client's first name, last name, obviously the clinician's name, the diagnosis of what the client has been diagnosed with. Some of these the referring date will look a little bit like this at times because some of your clients have been transferred from other clinicians to you. At other times, it's just the date that it was referred to you, so there would only be one date. The actual intake date from the time that it was referred, and the CTP. So here we either have a couple of different ways of looking at this. It's been submitted to your supervisor and you're waiting for approval on it. You're pending because the 30-day mark hasn't yet come and it's still something that you're working on, or the actual date that it was finalized on and that your supervisor approved it. And then here the school site. And this is just to be able to know what schools you're providing services to in regards to the clients that have been assigned to you. So the information documented here, obviously the appointment, time, and date. And this is important to be able to provide because sometimes there are a couple of schools that we are seeing clients in the schools. They have what's called a therapy lab. And they will give us the referral, let us know that during school hours, they could be seen, for example, on a Thursday at 9, 10 a.m. because that's one of the periods that they can use for therapy, for example. And so we want to make sure that the monthly log has the information that the client is being seen on a weekly basis. We here, you'll see in the upcoming form that we track individual sessions, which are face-to-face client sessions, telehealth versus non-telehealth or telephone sessions, and asking the clients, we'll talk a little bit about what it means to ask the clients to really keep the camera on. And again, that has a lot to do with like just the service that we're providing to the client. Collateral sessions, any sessions that we are having with either parents or caregivers, babysitters, siblings, etc., that are really staying in the client's care so that we can either coordinate services or they're giving us information or we're providing them with updates in regards to some behaviors, possibly some homework, some interventions that we have been teaching the client. We also document here the family sessions, obviously a dyad with the parent and the caregiver or the client and the caregiver, sometimes siblings. The client will have a couple of sessions with siblings, also noted as a family session. A quick note, when we're doing an assessment right up front, the first couple of appointments that we're meeting with the parent and the client, that we are noting those as family sessions as we are assessing them. So that would count towards you picking up hours for your school and the BBS in regards to family sessions. We also have what's called the client advocacy hours that we are picking up, or sometimes we'll refer to them as TCM, targeted case management hours. And that's basically helping clients get connected to some community-based organizations that will help improve clients' mental health directly or indirectly, such as linking them to housing or food pantries or daycare or possibly after school tutoring or a support group for the client or a parent group for the parent, anything that we're linking them to outside of the services that we're providing to directly would be considered some client advocacy. And then of course, consultations with school staff, teachers, counselors, psychiatrists, social workers, some staff at La Posada that we get referrals from as well. So consultation can be documented as well on here. So the next portion of this is being able to set up the appointment time and date column. And that really just goes to show us, your supervisors, who you're seeing, what days at what times. And then, like I noted, the individual sessions, collateral sessions, family sessions, and eventually group sessions. And what I do want to say about this is that we have a 1 month Excel sheet that is cumulative. So as I go through these, you'll see how the timeframes are just added into the same column for the full month. So here we have, for example, in January for client number 5, JZ Carter, he's seen on Saturdays at 3. And in January, we had a collateral session with a caregiver, and we saw him individually on the 8th. Okay. And then we'll note here that the other information being tracked, and you'll see this coming up on the other columns, is how they're cumulative. So week 1, for example, we see somebody on the 3rd. On the 2nd week, we see them also on the 10th, and so forth on the 17th, so forth on the 24th. We'll see how those dates are just sort of added to the same column. And then once the new month comes along, we get a new sheet for the next month, for example, February. Same thing with collateral, same thing with family sessions. If we're seeing them ongoingly throughout the month, we will just continue to add. We don't delete the dates, since this is also being used to not only document this, but also in the back end to make sure that we're noting the correct hours on our BBS forms. It's where your supervisors go and tally some of the hours that you have accumulated here, and billing is being used on the back end. So it's essential that the information here is accurate. It's also used for when we're transferring caseloads from one person to the other. We'll just basically copy and paste this and put it onto the oncoming clinician's caseload with information that should be carried over so they don't start from scratch. And that looks a little like this. So here we have the action plans and supervisor updates that talk a little bit about how we go about making notations during supervisions. So for example, John Doe on the 3rd, apparently they were supposed to have individual session. We called the caregiver, no response. We texted them, and we're waiting for a response. The supervisor will review the CTP that was submitted. Client number 2, Jay, on the 4th, they did not show due to illness. We go here and we make notations of who is not showing. So anytime a client does not show up for a scheduled appointment, we will write a no-show progress note. And in the content, we'll make sure that we leave the MSE, the mental status exam part, completely empty. But in the content of the session, we will want to go and make note of if the parent just no-showed or the client just no-showed, you waited there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, you texted them, there was no response. Maybe they did respond, then they said they forgot or they were at a different appointment. We'll make note on that no-show progress note to document how what happened during that session. On the supervisor updates, your supervisor will go in there and sometimes we'll add additional information that they're either waiting on. If we're having supervision, it might be your supervisor wanting to follow up with you at your next supervision in regards to a directive they gave you. So for example, client number 7, Jason, the supervisor asked the therapist to please follow up with a new GAD-7 screening. So it's just, where we go ahead and note it and we talk about it at the next session. Client number 9, Samuel, we asked the therapist to inquire about regional center or an IEP with the parent. So it's just our reminders to kind of go back and request information that's been asked for of the clinicians. And then obviously the languages for the client and the parent. Again, very useful as we're transferring clients from one to the other. If we have a parent, for example, that is monolingual Spanish and they are very involved in our treatment and in the sessions and in family sessions, we want to make sure that we're also transferring them over to somebody that would be able to assist with that language versus giving them someone that doesn't speak Spanish, for example, and then we're having to sort of coordinate possibly somebody to translate and whatnot. So we want to make sure that these languages are often being revised or updated for accuracy. Like I noted, action plans, we document no-shows, cancellations, reschedules, updating schools that refer clients to us. This is where Ben really takes the information in regards to who's been showing up and not showing up, or who's been giving us the runaround in regards to coming up for a session possibly. We'll make notations of voicemails that we've left or text messages that we've provided. We always want to make sure that we start with a date. What day did this information happen, or did we relay a call or a text? Again, like I said, supervisor updates, it's used for transferring. Please make sure that you're updating this as soon as any information changes. Here we have the last part of the form. And like I said, when you break it down, it seems a little bit less intimidating, right? So here we have the goals. And understanding that the goals are noted in your CTP. And often what we find is that as we're having supervision with our staff, with you guys, is that maybe you already have a caseload of 11, they all have some goals, and your supervisor will ask, so remind me, what's the goal that you're working on? And trust, it's sometimes difficult to know right off the bat who it is, and then we have to go look for it and find the CTP or one of the notes. So what I like to see happen is you copy and paste your goal the moment that you finalize it on the client treatment plan or the CTP. You copy and you paste it here, and that way, as we're having supervision, I know exactly what client you're talking about, what the diagnosis was when you see them, and what the goals that we're working on, so that it's often clear in regards to who we're talking about. So like I said, just copy and paste the goals from the CTP here and update accordingly. If you ever need to update a CTP and you change the goal, just make sure once again that you copy and you paste it here so that it's always updated. So when are these due? Notes are due by the end of the day or no later than by the next day. So 24-hour turnaround, super important to stay up to date on those. If you feel that for some reason you're falling behind, please always ensure that your supervisor is notified. Even if it's an email, a text, hey, I feel I'm like 3 days behind. I want to talk about it at our next supervision. Definitely be proactive about what you're not feeling that you're on top of, you're falling behind on, you need clarification on. You might not understand how to write a SMART goal. You want to get an overview of a assessment and how to write a CTP. By all means, you don't have to figure it out on your own. We are here to support you in that. And as long as you're staying, keeping us informed and letting us know, and not when we're super late on our notes, maybe weeks, a couple of maybe 5, 7, 10 notes sometimes feels overwhelming when they start to accumulate. So definitely keep us informed right up front. Logging dates and sessions, like noted here on the monthly log, daily. This is something that you should be having open on the back end of your computer as you're meeting with a client. Maybe as you're waiting for them to show up, you're waiting for your next client to show up, you just finished with the client, just update that information so that it is not something that is weighing heavily on you later on because you haven't filled it out. We use this form on a weekly basis for different reasons. For billing, for meeting next week, we have a new part where admin Jessica is giving us percentages of how many clients have been assigned to us, how many we're seeing, how many we're seeing on a regular basis. One, to ensure that we are picking up the hours that we need to be able to graduate, to be able to document that we've seen, to be able to document on your BBS hours, to be able to document on your evaluation. When you come in and you sign your contract, that's the other part too. If we're signing on to 15 face-to-face weekly sessions, we want to make note of how those are happening, if they are happening, and if they're not, to be able to have a conversation with your supervisor about it. If there is 1 or 2 clients that are just not showing up, I want you to also think about that in the sense of, will you be meeting all your hours by the end of your stay with Luminarias? So we're always trying to help us manage that in one way, shape, or form. So make sure you're logging your dates and your sessions daily, but no later than by the end of Saturday, so that Jessica can go ahead and do what she does with the productivity part of it, for billing, and for Ben having the information he needs for each week's meeting. And of course, so that you and your supervisors can talk about your clients, the caseload, etc. But if you're having difficulty tracking it, understanding it, by all means, talk to your supervisor. So the next thing we're going to talk about is our monthly calendar. And the monthly calendar and your log will always be in sync in regards to dates. So you'll get a monthly calendar up front. You've probably seen this. You filled it out possibly even before you started in regards to what your availability is. So you're letting us know this is the timeframes that you have available. We'll go ahead and ensure that we're blocking out like our group supervisions, our individual supervisions, and then we know when you have available to see clients. So this is the calendar we use to go ahead and assign clients to you. So initially, it looks this pretty. So we update our calendars when we move clients to a regular slot. We update it when you get a new client, and then we go ahead and we remove clients when the client has either been terminated or closed. So when we get a client up front, we make the phone call to make the first appointment, the intake session. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's their regular slot. But if at that point you confirmed that you're going to be seeing Johnny on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., then you go ahead and you update this calendar and you put Johnny in at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. So that if, for example, tomorrow we have a new client that their only availability is Tuesdays at 4 p.m., we know not to give it to you because that slot has already been taken. There are times that if we are falling behind and we haven't updated it, and we as a team meet to assign new clients and we see open availability, we're assuming that that is updated and correct. So then it just falls back on you to either have a conversation with your supervisor to say, hey, I already have a kiddo at that time frame. I actually called them and they can't meet any other time. And then we have to reassign that client. Sometimes what happens is that we call the client and you say, hey, I know you noted that Tuesdays at 4 is the only time you have available. I actually have a Tuesday at 5. Would that work for you? And lo and behold, it does, and we can keep that client. So it's really important, needless to say, to make sure that we're keeping that updated. We want to make sure that we're being very proactive during students' time off. And with schools, we know there's often holidays, Mondays off, who knows, Fridays off, whatever it is. There's different things, testing that's going on. So we want to make sure that we're constantly communicating with our clients in regards to scheduling for the next week. Hey, I just wanted to confirm next Tuesday, same time. Or I just, I have a bunch of Monday appointments and I know that next Monday is going to be 4th of July weekend, for example. And I say, hey, Monday is 4th of July. I know I can't see you during school. You're not going to be at school. Can I see you Monday at home? Will you be home? What is there plans? And if not, if you're going to be taking the day off, can I see you on Tuesday, for example, during this time frame? So we want to make sure that we're rescheduling the client for the same week. We cannot reiterate that enough. Consistency is key when we're providing mental health services to our clients. So just because Monday's a holiday, it doesn't mean that I skip Monday and I see them the following Monday. It means, where can I squeeze you in? Because you might have a tight schedule that will work for you and myself whenever possible. So be aware of their schooling scheduling in advance. Please confirm every single session right before you end. Even if that is a constant repeat, they know, yes, I'll see you next Monday, 4 p.m. It just, please confirm. Sometimes even with the parents, because parents often come back or they won't show up for a session, you call them and they're like, oh, we're at a dental appointment. And the thought is, did we not know that last week, right? So when we're talking to a parent, we'll talk about, hey, I'll see Johnny next Monday at 4. We don't have any other appointments, right? Like just constantly confirming that I will be seeing your child next week at this time. And then here we would be adding our individual and our group supervisions to the monthly calendar. So those will stay consistent for the most part, unless some changes have to happen in regards to your individual. But we want to make sure that we're adding our weekly group and individual supervisions to our calendar. So it might look something like this. For example, I personally have my groups on Wednesdays from 8 to 10 a.m. So if you're one of my supervisees, that will be crossed off. I'll be seeing you individually on Fridays at 11 a.m., for example. This lets me know that you have this time available. Now, don't freak out. Just because you have all this availability, we're not going to fill it all up with calendars. We obviously have a contract. It's no more than 15 face-to-face clients per week. Now, that could mean 15 clients, or that could mean 16, that could mean 17, but that's only because we have some clients that are just not showing, and we don't want to be losing out on our hours. Or it might be actually 11 clients because you have a consistent flow of family sessions on a weekly basis that makes it into your 15-hour mark. or a constant collateral flow of parents that just give you all the hours that you need on a weekly basis. So here we have 4 on Monday and 7 on Thursdays. That gives us 11 clients, and there's some room to play with here to be able to assign other clients. Now, we try to be very mindful that if there are some gaps, you go to school, I don't want to see, for example, if you have 3 more slots available, 4 more slots available, I don't want to put one Friday at 2 p.m., Monday, 8 a.m., and just make this a horrible, experience. We really don't. So as much as possible, we try to sort of block clients off. Some trainees like to do back-to-back sessions. They work on their notes in between clients or towards the end of the day, and they just turn things in that order. So again, just because you have this availability and maybe you do want to have more clients, by all means, if you want to have more clients, please let your supervisors know. But we will try to make it as manageable as possible. So here I encourage, of course, any questions you might have, make a note of them, review them with your supervisor. Once again, you'll receive a little evaluation at the end of this survey. And that would be all for now. But if you have any questions or comments, please make sure you make a note of them and talk to your supervisor. And we will see each other soon. Thank you. Take care.